Welcome back everyone. So today's video is going to be about just a quick Q&A of nursing here in Australia and actually the relocation process, not the details. I'll be making a separate video for that one. So I just have a few questions that, so I sent a post, a story in Instagram asking people to ask me questions. Any questions. So, and then I divided it to two, nursing related and then nursing ones. So I have about 10 in total here. If, you know, like just a quick background, I am a nurse in Toronto, Canada, and we moved here, myself and my family, you know, my husband and two kids, moved here in Melbourne, Australia on November 23rd. So it's only been, it's still recent, it's only like what, January, what's the date today? The 5th today, so I haven't been really here in Australia long, so that's me, nurse in Toronto, Canada, now move here in Australia in a 482 skilled visa to work as a registered nurse. Okay, so first question is pretty much that background. It's not really a question, but just a quick background information about me. And previously in Toronto, Canada, I was working as an oncology nurse in an ambulatory care center. So what that means is that I work in a clinic setting with, you know, partnering with physicians, seeing patients from consult to the first appointment until they get discharged from the clinic. When I say discharge, whether they go back, the care it goes back to their family doctor or a palliative setting in a community. So that's my previous work experience in Canada. Here in Australia, actually there's a question for that, so I'm going to go through the questions right now. Okay, so that's me. Second question, and I'm sure this is like everyone's question, like the majority of people who asked me, they said, why Australia? It's like so far away, you know, from Toronto, and then decided to move to Australia. So initially, my husband and I were talking, like, this is like 5 years ago, we talk about moving elsewhere. So working as a nurse is like the best way to relocate because I can always get a job anywhere, right? So why Australia? So part of we made a list as to which countries we wanted to go to if we are to travel, just like a traveling family. So if we were to move, like which countries we wanted to stay. You know, we have that list. We thought about the states, couldn't decide on a state. I actually took the NCLEX US just to have flexibility in working anywhere. So as a Canadian, I can work in some states that will allow or will accept the Canadian nursing exam or registration. But for me, I wanted to have the flexibility to work anywhere in the States. And I had the time as well because I was like pregnant at that time with my first child. So I had a lot of time, you know, to take tests. So why we chose Australia is because first and foremost, if we did choose to stay the States, then we would have purchased ourselves an RV because we always wanted to stay in an RV and travel or drive around the different states. But with that means that we will be purchasing, you know, that vehicle and then moving it to Australia, where it's a totally opposite side of the road, like driving. Like we could have sold it and then, you know, move, but we wanted to go far away. We wanted to go to the furthest country in our list, and that's Australia. And why Australia as well is because part of our goal is to travel around the world, including Asia. So we wanted to go around and explore the different countries in Asia, and then, you know, and then also in Australia. So we wanted to explore Australia as well. So it's just like, you know, we make Australia as the hub where I can still make money, and then on my days off or vacation days or leave days, we can go travel the different countries in Asia. So we don't think 2 years is enough. So my visa is for 2 years, but we don't think it's enough. We might end up actually staying longer just because we don't think we can travel the entire, you know, Asia, you know, in 2 years. That's just me being realistic. So that's the reason why we're moving to Australia. Plus, it's better pay wise. It's comparable to my pay in Canada, so I know we will be okay financially. So that was one of the big things is the finances as well. In addition, so Australia, at least in the state of Victoria, it's unionized, so you get paid based on your experience. And for my job here, they honored my years of experience. That means my pay rate is comparable to the one in Canada. So the third question is, how did I become a nurse in Australia? So being a nurse, being a Canadian nurse, so it's a lot easier. My pathway is a bit easier than other people. So for me, I will actually create a step-by-step video, not step-by-step, like a more detailed or video about my process, like my application to the nursing board here in Australia. They called AFRA, the Australian Health practitioner, I think regulation agency. Don't quote me on that if that's the acronym. Yeah, so it's called AFRA, where you register and apply for your license. So how did I become a nurse? So first you have to check. So I checked the website, AFRA website, and then I looked into the details as to how to become a nurse in Australia as an international applicant. So there's different pathways to choose from, and then they have a little quiz there as to like which pathway you belong. But then again, I will show you in a different video. So first, you do need to check out the website, the AFRA website. Before you even decide to apply any jobs in Australia, you need to apply for your license first. You need to check what you need to do before you apply for your registration, for your nursing registration with AFRA. So let's see, the fourth question, how hard was it to get a nursing license in Australia? For me, as a Canadian nurse, it's actually pretty easy to get a nursing license in Australia because, they honor my experience, my credentials as well, they honor it. The biggest thing about the application to become a nurse is that the paperwork, the amount of paperwork, they're very particular about how you need to certify your documents. So you definitely need to check out their website. You need to read the instructions because if you don't do it the first time, they're gonna message you and ask you to redo it. Like not redo it in payment wise, but to redo some of the documents. That means you might end up having to pay to get it notarized again to make sure that they're, writing the exact like word by word as to how they want to word it. It's like, for example, to certify documents, it's like I certify and whatnot, but you have to actually, even though the notarized place have their own stamp, no, you have to make sure that they actually write the exact statement that AFRA wants them to write. So if you don't follow it, they will send it back to you and you'll have to redo it. Because that happens to me when I did the in-person, the last step, which is the in-person with my employer to go through the documents. They just responded, you need to redo it because the exact statement is not correct. The manager didn't follow the exact rules on how to, notarize it kind of thing or certify the documents. So yes, just to save you money, time, make sure you read the instruction well and then, get it right the first time. And if you don't get it right the first time, hey, they'll send you an email to redo it with an exact instruction as to what you should be doing and what you should be sending them or submitting to them. So, if you get it wrong the first time, don't worry, they go back to you. So yeah, it's just a lot of paperwork. But in my case, it's a lot because I'm an experienced nurse. I've been a nurse for like 11 and a half years now. So it's a bit, I have so many paperwork, like credentials, But if you've been a nurse for like 3 years, for example, because you have to be a nurse at least 2 years, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you need to have some experience, right? But if you're like a nurse for like within 5 years, it may be easier because you don't have a ton of, you don't have a ton of like education yet. Like you go to one school to get your degree or two schools and then your registration and then your job. Like if you didn't go from an agency right away, if you have one job within first 5 years of nursing, it's a lot easier because you don't have to you know gather all those documents from different facilities and stuff. So it may be a bit much more easier for you, and much more easy, way easier, if you did your education, that first 5 years straight full-time of education in Canada, as we won't have to do an English test, for example. So I moved in Canada from the Philippines when I was 18. So obviously, and when I applied for my nursing registration here in Australia, it's been, it had a break because I haven't been in school. I took my degree. It's been like over 5 years of me being in school. Even though I was in school for my master's program, it's not like 5 years full time like straight. So they wanted that as an evidence. So if you just graduated, your degree, and then you took high school and then or grade school, even primary school in Canada, honestly, you didn't have to do the English test. Although my advice is still go through the English test if you wanted to apply for PR, because just to earn points. I'll tell you more about my experience for the English test later on in future videos. So yes, it wasn't hard to get a nursing license in Australia. You just have to follow the instruction well and get it right the first time. So how hard was it? The fifth question is, how hard was it to get a job here in Australia? It was actually very easy. So I just went to the website. I think Indeed website, and Seek. So those two websites. But I actually didn't go through those websites directly. What I did first was look at the best oncology the cancer centers in Australia. And if you Googled it, you'll find that Peter Mac is the popular one in my Google search. So, which I applied to, because but it's a public hospital. They do sponsor international nurses, oncology nurses. So it is possible they do sponsorship. I just had to apply, right? So I applied one public, and I decided to apply in private as well. And then because I wanted to compare, I didn't know much about the benefits, of working full time. I do know that I wanted to work full time because I'll be the main. It will be a single income household for a bit. So I'll be the main provider, right, for the most part. So wanted to apply full time. Can't decide public or private. So what I did was I made sure I make my specific questions of which one will benefit me better: quality of life, wellness, work-life balance, those kind of things. So I interviewed to two different places, so one private, one public. And then for both places, during the interview process, I asked them, what are aside from what's available on the website, I asked them, what's the difference, if they provide relocation, specific questions, like, do you provide relocation assistance for overseas applicants, And then, how about scheduling? Do you offer flexible scheduling? Is it 8-hour, 12-hour? What's the nurse-patient ratio kind of thing? So I'm going to post a different video as well about what to ask during your interview. For my part, because I know exactly what I want, and I know my experiences, as an experienced nurse, and they have the need. So there is quite a demand for nurses, experienced nurses in particular. So I know that I'm not going to beat around the bush kind of thing. Like, I'm not mucking around. Is that what they're saying here? I'm not mucking around. I want to know exactly, I'm serious of relocating to Australia, and I need to choose the organization that, fits the lifestyle that I want while here, right? So you have to ask those specific questions. And one of those questions for me is, will you honor my experience in Canada? What is the pay rate usually in the state of Victoria? Like what grade or experience level I am in your company kind of thing. So what is that estimate hourly pay rate, because I want to make sure that it's comparable, because I want to make sure that we will be okay as a single income family for a bit until my husband gets a job here. Keep in mind that we do have a 6-month-old at that time, so we were like, we have a baby. I know we'll be paying for childcare when my husband finds a job here, so we want to make sure that we can actually afford living here in Melbourne, because it is not cheap, right? So expenses is actually comparable to in Canada too, so we want to make sure that we're earning enough to support our lifestyle here. And that includes the ability to travel, having the money to enjoy life while here. So not hard to get a job. You just have to apply. I decided to choose specific hospitals based on my Google search, reviews. Also, I asked around different Facebook groups, like forums, primarily like the work holiday visa nurses, with HCA or Healthcare Australia. So they're agency nurses, but because they are agency nurses, they have more experience of different facilities. So ask the exact questions, like, you guys have experience working here? What's the benefit of working public or private? Like, how was the experience? And they're very great with answering questions. They're not saying negative stuff. They're telling you their experience, like personal experience of the unit. And for the most part, they said, depending on what you want, they're honestly both the same. And from what I gathered, really, is that it's who you work with. The company, what they can provide you, supports and whatnot, but they pretty much have like the same type of experience. Like, they couldn't tell me exactly public or private based on my goals. So based on my goals, I said it doesn't matter. They both are comparable. At least the hospitals that I chose to interview, so the one public and one private. And even after the interview process, I was so confident of, that, and I was so happy that I chose both hospitals. But then I got hired in both hospitals. I had to make a decision, a final decision as to which one to choose, which is the hardest, actually. I had to ask someone who was an Australian in Canada, who was a nurse in Sydney at that time, saying that, okay, what was the difference really in public and private? Like, what was your personal experience? Like offline. And then because it's comparable, it was a hard decision. And then my final decision was based on which of the facility can actually have a better work-life balance, and is actually fit with my needs and my goals and the lifestyle that I want to live with my family, right? So that's the biggest thing, and I decided to choose a private one because of that flexibility. So not very hard. So if you ask other people, even other industry, they're gonna, if you ask them how to get a job, if it was easy to get a job, I don't know other industry, but for nursing, you can choose Seek or Indeed websites, and then you apply from there. You can go directly to the website as well. They're usually pretty transparent about how much you would get paid, your key responsibilities, and really, if there's questions, you will have to ask those questions during the interview. But it's not hard at all. There is a lot of need, which is why it is part of the occupation. Nursing is one of the occupations in the skilled list, like the shortage here, the occupations that they need here in Australia that you can get a visa for that 482 visa. Okay, so 6th question. Did I hire an agent for a job? No, I did not. I looked for the facilities by myself. And then, I Google search. It wasn't that hard, really. I just looked for the best oncology hospitals in Australia. I actually even included which hospitals in Australia that, will eventually give CAR T therapy. I even included that because part of my goal is to actually get exposed to hematology, clinical trials and whatnot. So, look into your short-term and long-term goals, and, that was my process of choosing for a job and which one to apply. So, you have to know yourself. Are you going to be okay with bedside nursing? Are you particular about a certain type of field? It's your decision mainly, but for me, I'm very specific of where I want to work and what I want to do while here. And did not hire an agent. Like, it was so easy to get a job that there was no need for it. I did, however, like paid for an agent, a relocation agent, to help us find a place, because when I got my approval from AFRA to present in person, I only had a month left. Only had a month from the deadline, and when I got my visa, actually. So when I got approval from AFRA, we applied for the visa, but then when we got the visa approval, it wasn't that long, but it ends up like I had a month left before I need to be presenting in person, and I didn't want to extend it anymore. And I think that was the final extension too, because I had to like extend like multiple times because of the pandemic. So yeah, so that was my final extension, December 9 or something. But so I was like, I have a month to relocate, so I need to make sure that we have a place to stay, because Airbnb was very expensive. It's like 3 to 4 grand a month, even more. But if you find a place, like if you find an apartment already before coming here, then and usually the apartment is a lot cheaper, or half the price even of what you would have paid in an Airbnb. So I was like, I'm just gonna hire someone and it was very. I think the challenge really is finding a place while you're offshore, like while I was in Canada. It was very hard to find a place, because first, I don't have a ton of time left, and there's a lot of need for available apartments, and more people wanting to rent, but there's not enough place to rent, if you know what I mean. So decided to hire Melbourne Rental Search, and I will be doing a separate video about my personal opinion and experience with Melbourne Rental Search. Our agent name is Simone, and she's amazing. So obviously that review is going to be on the positive side, because they're really amazing, and I highly recommend them. And honestly, I would have hired them even if I have to redo this process again. I would hire them again, because it was that smooth. Our relocation process was so smooth, moving from Canada to here. So, seventh question is, which visa did I choose? So I mentioned it in the previous, quickly. It was a 482 skilled visa. Let me actually Google it, the exact name. But I know it's a 482 visa. Let's see, 482 visa. So it's a temporary skill shortage visa. Is for skilled workers nominated by employers who have a labor agreement. So my son just woke up. But anyways, that's the visa that we're in, and there's specific occupation in that for that visa. So your occupation has to be part of that. And for the specific occupation, different state have different needs. So you have to check the exact state where you want to work, and then if your occupation is part of that. Nurses is, of course, I think it's like in most states all over Australia, I think, because we have a global nursing shortage going on, right? So yeah, so that's the visa. 8 questions. Pay difference. So this is a big one. Canada and Australia is very comparable, actually. So in future videos, I will be giving you an outline of how much I get paid in Australia and also in Canada. So it's just a quick note. Pay difference is, for my base pay, I get paid here $1 less than hourly in Canada, but overall I get paid more here than in Canada, because of the pay differentials here is a bit higher. In addition, if you have a master's degree, they also pay you extra for it. So my base pay is 46 something, close to 47, but the extra hourly rate, if you have your master's degree, is close to $3 an hour. So it's definitely, and then there's also a meal allowance or uniform allowance that they give you. And then honestly, I didn't have to buy a stethoscope, because in every room with the patient there is a stethoscope. And then the uniform, they provide it. I mean, they give you a uniform allowance. I ordered it. I didn't have to pay for it. It goes to the company. And I think it's an annually that you can get free uniforms, right? So you can still buy your own. Like, I buy my own scrub bottoms, because it never fit me, the one that they provided. There's never a petite size. So that's pretty much, I can say that my pay here is a lot higher than in Canada. 9th question, vaccine requirements. So in Canada, they recommend to get all the boosters shot, but really the mandatory one is to have the 2 doses as a requirement. So the complete fully vaccinated individual will have 2 doses of the, for example, Pfizer. So I should have 2 doses, and recommended is to have the booster. In Australia, on the other hand, it was a requirement. I was required to take 2 doses of the Pfizer. You can take any, which is that I got the Pfizer, so I decided to take the Pfizer as well. So for me to get the 2 doses and a booster shot. So I actually got my booster shot here because I thought the 2 were fine. And also because I had issues with I had a reaction from the vaccine after my first one, and then my second one, I was put on like a steroid, the allergy protocol to make sure I don't react again. But then on a third one, after I met with an allergy doctor in Canada before I left, I couldn't get my third one because in case that they were going to put me on steroids, I had gestational diabetes, so I couldn't have steroids at that time, so I decided to wait. But I didn't have time to get my booster shot in Canada. But then when I came here, when they said the third one, the booster is required, so I'm like, I'll just get it here. Hopefully I don't react, And then it just took I just pretty much followed the instruction from my allergy doctor, and he had us saying that, take, if you react or something, take all the antihistamines that he was telling me about, and then see a doctor if I need more help here. So also with the 482 visa, by the way, one of the requirements is to have a private insurance coverage. So you do need private health insurance. It is a bit expensive. There's different packages. It's just that I decided to get extras as well. So in total, it's like 450, close to 500 per month is what we pay for private insurance, like a family coverage with Bupa. So that's the biggest thing with a 482 visa. You need to have your own private health insurance. Vaccine requirements. Lastly, the 10th one is what advice can I give to those people who are interested to work as a nurse here in Australia. So my biggest advice is to first check the AFRA website. Make sure you follow which pathway you should follow to be licensed to work in Australia as a nurse. Also, if you wanted to move, and you're not sure if you should because you're gonna move with family. Of course, it's easier for you to move here if you're single. If you're gonna be in work holiday visa, you might not need a 482 visa, like the visa sponsorship. But if you have a family, don't let it be a barrier to not be able to travel and move here. I came here with a husband and 2 kids. With my youngest, it's like 6 months old, and it didn't stop us. You just have to really work on, okay, you have this goal to move to Australia and work as a nurse. What are your barriers? What's stopping you? List all those and then find the answers to those for each barrier. For example, finances. Find out if they're going to honor your experience, how much you get paid, and how much do you need to make to be able to live comfortably, And then you have to have contingency plan. You need to make sure that you don't increase your income. You have to calculate all those things. And then if you have loans or debts in Canada, we have a house in Canada. Biggest thing is what to do with the house. Other thing is I have a student loan in Canada. So how do I end up paying for that, right? So what we did is that we're renting our property, and then I still get, part of rental, property tax. My brother is renting it, so he's been paying, the property tax, part of that. It's all paid for, so we're not having to worry about it. The student loan, on the other hand, I do have, money still in Canada, so I make payments for it. And then I do send money. So it's not ideal because I'm sending money, but I am still we are thinking in the process of doing something where we can earn income in Canada, not attached to our Australian bank account. So it goes to our Canadian bank account, more of a remote type of job. And then that's what I use to pay for my student loan. And for the most part, though, I've been just transferring money from here, what I make here, because I make enough that I can afford to pay. It wasn't really much, my student loan. Actually, it's much for my 2-year master's degree. It's freaking 35 grand. It's a lot. more than I pay. I only had like 11,000 for my degree because, but this time I wanted to finish my master's, so I pretty much like full time, 2 years of master's degree. It was a lot, but I know I can pay it off right away. So yeah, so you just have to transfer money from my Australian pay. I'll tell you more about it, how I do it. I'm not a pro when it comes to like finding the best deals and transferring money, but it's not like it's not impossible. I could talk to you more about it in future videos. Yeah. So that's about it, really. Those are my two advice. Check the Afro websites. I can find out what's stopping you from moving here. And then, if you write everything down, if you have answers if you look for those answers of each thing that's stopping you from moving here, then it makes it, like once you have those answers, it makes it easier and it makes it like possible. What seemed to be impossible is actually, possible. Everyone's doing it. Everyone moved with a family. Everyone's moved like, as a single parent with kids here. Like you just have to find out what's stopping you and how are you gonna go around that, right? So that's my biggest advice. And yeah, hope you enjoy this quick Q&A. Bye now.